Hello, everyone. This is Pam Sari, and I direct the Asian American and Asian Resource and Culture Center at Purdue University. This is April 16, 2020, and we have our guest today, Bapak Santo Purnama, co-founder, right, of Sensing Self.
Yes, yes.
So thank you, Pak, for being willing to be interviewed. How are
My
you,
pleasure.
loved
I'm
ones,
doing good.
families?
Yeah, they are all fine. We all coop up in the house just like everybody else.
Yes, yeah, same here. Purdue has moved virtually. So let's just start.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and one thing that immediately catches my attention when reading about
Mhm,
you is the transnational nature of your professional and also professional lives. I'm wondering if
mhm.
you can tell us more about your childhood and family background and K to 12 education for us a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, I was born in Medan, a pretty big city in the island of Sumatra. I was there for until 10 years old before I moved to Jakarta. Spent a good time of my youth there. I went to a high school called Bunda Hati Kudus. Yeah, I was there, and right after I was out of high school, I went to US to pursue my bachelor degree. Moved to and then got my degree in computer. Well, actually, in computer and electrical engineering from Purdue in 1995, and after that, I got a job offer. Moved to Bay Area, and that's where my career really gets started.
I see. I will just take you to the down the memory lane to your time at Purdue. I wonder
Mm-hmm.
if you would be willing to tell us more about your time at Purdue in Greater Lafayette. Obviously, you said your major, but I'm wondering how did you get involved on campus, and perhaps a couple of your best memory about Purdue and the.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of awesome memory there. I can never ever forget about how cool it was. uh,
Okay.
back then it was like 25 years ago. So literally there's only campus and nothing else outside. So we were very focused. I was actually very focused. Just spent a lot of time in the labs, studying, and my favorite pastime was just going to play basketball. And occasionally we went to I think 24 hours Walmart just to blow some steam off. But yeah, most of the time staying on campus and stay in the dorm. I didn't even leave off campus until I think my last semester there.
Mhm.
So yeah, a lot of good memories.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that night walk at Walmart is a continuing tradition for all of us here. I really like that.
Yeah, yeah, that was favorite things to do.
Right, right. Okay, so how was your journey like after Purdue? You mentioned you moved to the Bay Area. Did you studied, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
further
So
your education.
I got a job at a company called Plant Materials, and I spent several years there, and also I continued to pursue my master's degree at the Stanford University. And that was during the height of the dot-com era. So I'm sure that everybody was really into wanting to start something new. It's like internet companies and so on and so forth. So I was like one of them. So I started a like an e-commerce company, and it's called Site for Shop, and we sold electronic stuff online, and and then we were doing pretty well. And then came this company called Buy.com. At that time, Amazon wasn't even relevant in terms of selling other stuff than books. So we were like we were doing pretty well in selling electronic stuff. We allowed users to configure computer. Back then, like when you want to buy a PC, you kind of want to configure what is inside the PC, right? You want to configure what the video card to use, what the chip to use, and so on and so forth. So we had the capability online that allows you to do that. And I think there were only a handful of companies that provided that type of feature. One of them was Dell.com. So at the time they were pretty big. So we were doing well, and then came this company called Buy.com. They got so much venture money. They started to sell below their cost, because of the rationale behind that was like, okay, sell below cost so that we can get as many users as possible, and they use the users as the currency. We were just not able to compete back then. Luckily we got an offer. We sold the company, we exit that side of things. Then came the dot-com bubble, right? And after that, I started a consulting firm, which leads me into another startup that is in the hard drive business. So the company is called Fabric. I was like one of the founders, and what we did was kind of I think it's too early for its good sake, right? It's like having a Dropbox, but you have it at your own home. So we sell this device, this hard drive, you plug into the Ethernet at home, and you'll be able to share all the contents inside to anyone online. So the technology itself was pretty advanced. We have a pretty interactive user interface and so on and so forth. So we did that. The company was eventually acquired by HGST, which is Hitachi Global Storage Technology, and that company eventually merged with Western Digital. But this is always new things and new startups that I was involved in, and I find it to be pretty interesting.
I really like that. Was quite a journey for you. And so from those companies, how did you end up in medical equipment?
Mm-hmm.
After that, did that come after?
Yeah, they came way after. I was whatever that I just mentioned to you. I was involved in e-commerce. I was involved in the consulting firm. I was involved in the hard drive, storage technology type of a startup. And then right after that, I also started another boutique consulting firm, which grew into like a 50 employees. And we were doing very, very well. This is a high-tech boutique consulting firm. And then, I was involved in fintech. I started a company called Shelio, which was like a Square of EMV chip, because a Square at the time only accept a regular swipe credit card, but the technology that we had was to be able to accept EMV chip credit card. Nowadays, you see all EMV chip credit card, but back then, 2012, 2013,
Mm-hmm.
in US, there's no EMV chip, but outside of US, everybody was using EMV chip. So, but anyway, I was involved in fintech as well. So, these iterations, right? You've been to all these things, and it seems like, none of them has so much impact on the humanity, to do something a bit different. I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by friends and partners that are also thinking about the same thing, meanings that how to enhance humanity, how to move this humanity forward, right? I have a partner who's from India, and if you look at the demographic, India and Indonesia, they are pretty much the same, large populations. Certain things are not that accessible, especially for healthcare, right? if you go to Indonesia, certain part of Indonesia, people, if they want to take a urine test, for example, they will have to drive 3-4 hours to get to the closest lab and have their urine test, go back home, and then come back the day after, 2 days after, and get the results. Right. So this is like a very, very is a big issue, and nobody actually talk about it because it's a middle class and below. Right now, most modernizations of these big companies are for middle class and above. So and anyone categorized at middle class and below is a government's problem, right? So we think of what can be done, right? So one of the first things that we do is, okay, let's try to attack this. I mean, we all, among the partners, we are all blessed with whatever windfall that we received from our previous career. But this is time to kind of put something together that humanity. So so we started this Sanctions Out. The idea is very simple. The idea is how to make a lab test self-test. If you do it in lab, most likely you'll be able to do it at home by using your phone, right? Because phone nowadays is so advanced. The cameras that it has is way more advanced than some of the cameras that you find in the lab, which may be 3 or 5 or 10 years old, right? So feel like, okay, maybe that's the point where we can replace, not replace, but substitute certain elements of the labs, and that can be done using the phone.
Mm-hmm. That was amazing. And what year was that?
We started in 2017, so the ideas came before then, but we officially registered the company in 2017.
I see. Yeah, and you started tackling diabetes. Was that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we started tackling diabetes because at that time nobody knew about the coronavirus, right? Nobody would expect that pandemic is going to hit us that soon, right? We always feel that is like 100 years away, but just came so suddenly. But yeah, at the time, diabetes, because we look at we look at all the diseases, and there are certain diseases that were there are the results of our our habits, right? The food that we consume, the lack of exercise and so on and so forth. It's basically our lifestyle, and diabetes falls into that category, right? Of course there's things that you get from your parents, but there are things that you introduce it based on your lifestyle. So if you look at again, I'm going to go back to India and Indonesia because they have the mass populations and the demographic are very, very similar. The main food consumption in Indonesia is rice, right? Everybody eat rice. They the breakfast they eat rice, dinner, lunch they eat rice, right? I'm one of them. My favorite is actually fried rice, right? So so the amount of sugar that we consume is amazing. Like this, is very is a lot, right? And that is what happened, and we don't even realize that we are pre-diabetic, right? Because why? Because we don't even check it, right? How do you check it nowadays, right? The only thing, one of the ways that you check it is either you go to the doctor or you go and prick your finger and draw the bloods and see what your glucose level is. And there is a big impediment especially for kids, right? I have 3 kids, and none of my kids want anything to do with drawing bloods from the fingers, right? So at the end of the day, nobody knows that they have these pre-diabetic issues that is boiling, and they just didn't know that. So one of the first things that we try to tackle is that problem, and we look at this and we say, okay, what if we can use saliva to kind of monitor the sugar level in your body? and we were able to come up with that. And then what else do we want to know? So we know the sugar level, and we also need to monitor it. And what's the best way to monitor our lifestyle? The best way right now is phone, because we carry our phones everywhere we go. Right? So the first product that we come up with is, it's a smaller strip. You spit on it, and then you take a picture of the strip. Our app will analyze the strip, and it will tell you what your sugar level is. And then from the same app, you also can take a picture of what you eat, and take a picture of the dinner that you had, and so on and so forth. And over time, you can kind of understand that, hey, if I eat certain type of food at certain time, it might impact my sugar level. My body would not be able to process it properly, or so on and so forth. So all these informations you can easily track using your phone, and that would give a great tool for parents who want to keep track of their kids' habits, or it can be useful for pre-diabetic or diabetic patients.
Mm-hmm. That is awesome. Just the innovation that you put on this product, I think it's great. I forgot to mention that our center's staff members and also students were contributing questions for you. So the questions that I've been reading come from them as well.
Okay.
So can you, and this next question is also coming from them, and they mentioned they really like the name itself, Sensing Self, right? The explanation that you just gave us. Tell us more about the COVID-19 pre-screening kit that you're producing, and how you decided to do that. And also, I think some of our students want to know how it works. Obviously, this is the question that you already got from a lot of interviewers. So, but would you mind telling us?
Yeah, definitely. I think there are some articles that says, I'm the creator of that, or, in Indonesian it's called menciptakan. I just want to clarify that, because there's no one person to invent that. I think I've made that very clear before as well at the interview. There is the analogy with a software, for example. You have this open source, right? Is that information is like the developments that everybody put their efforts in. There's no one guy who invent anything. So this open source of information, we actually, the same thing, right? With COVID things, there's a lot of efforts that has been done. We take that, we look at it and say, hey, what can we contribute to improve the accuracy of the reading, right? So that is what we actually did. Right? We collaborate with scientists from China, from Hong Kong, China in particular, because at that early stage, back then it was several months ago. There is where all the samples are, right? The samples, we could get the actual positive patients and to contribute to our study. So we work closely with them, and we did 1,300 samples, and we run it through, and we enhance our the enzyme, and we were able to came up to about 92% accurate. And then in the early February, I believe, we start to ship our product. Initially, we sold it to European countries. At that time, it was not declared as a pandemic yet. So we sold it at a pretty good profit margin. But when it was announced as a pandemic, we start to reassess ourselves and see, maybe this is not a good opportunity to make money because of the situations. We understand that, if we come up with a good product, money is going to come and follow us. So we'll I think we will be in a good position after this pandemic pass away. And I think we can be a financially we can be very, very strong. But not at the moment. Not at the moment. We don't want to even talk about the profit or or margin that we can make. Right now is just to be sure that these tools can be on the hands of everyone.
Right. And that touches a little bit on the question that I got from one of our staff or students, that why you decided to price this product at a low rate, right? Both in terms of socially and also financially. And if I read correctly, previously it was around $21 you sold this product at, and now it's $10. So I'm wondering how you mentioned a little bit just the social aspect of it, but can you tell us more about how that decision?
Yeah, like I say, a company exists for a reason, right? I think most nonprofit companies exist so that they can make as much money as possible. It's a capitalized it's a capitalistic world. So I understand that. That's why when it was not a pandemic yet, we need to make sure that we get the return back for all the times and all the expenses that we put on to do the research to come up with the product, right? So there's that big margin. But as time goes on, I feel like, okay, this is not financially achievable by countries like Indonesian populations, right? Even at $10, it is about several days of someone's wages, right?
Right.
So I'll try to make it as affordable as possible so that it can get to as many people as possible. Now we are a small company, so we cannot afford to just give it away. But at the same time, we try to do our parts to make sure that it is affordable. That's the reason why I want to announce. When I was interviewed, I kind of put the price tag out there so that there's no, individual trying to manipulate the price.
I see. So, who is going to be the primary audience for this product currently? Is it going to be hospitals and large institutions, or?
It depends on the countries where you're talking about, right? I think for US, the FDA, we register for FDA so-called emergency use approval. So it's like a short-term, it's kind of like a shortcut approval of a certain medical product. Right? Usually, if you want to have some things to be approved by FDA, it's going to take like years, months, if not years, right? But they come up with this program called EAU. EUA. So in US, pretty much what they call it as a point of care, right? Either big corporations that has a license to operate, a wellness, some sort of wellness center. But outside of US, the regulation is completely different. For example, in let's just take in Indonesia, right? We could sell it in Indonesia, and individual can use it at home. And there is actually many brands out there that was sold in local retailers, and anybody can just buy and then use it. How about in India? India is a bit different. We, all our businesses in India, we sold it to not all, like maybe a good 95% of it, we sold it directly to the government there, to a provincial governments.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so it really depends on which area that you're talking about. But the idea is, yeah, you should be able to just do it yourself at home. Now there's elements to that, because I can talk about this. What if the goal of having tested so that they can be quarantined and not allowed coming back to work? If that's the goal, then just having this is not going to solve the problem, because because let me explain the scenario. Let's say I am working at Walmart, okay, and let's say Walmart requires requires the employees to be tested before coming back to work. If I can just take this test and test it myself and I'm tested positive, what will most likely I will say, because of financial implication, I would definitely want to say that I'm not positive so that I can go back
Right.
to work, right? Because of
Mm-hmm.
financial pressure, right? So this is the type of things that I feel like U.S. government is trying not to have these in the hands of end consumers, but they need this to be administered by licensed point of care, so that they can do some sort of a surveillance. Not the same as in India or in Indonesia.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That is very, very clear. So, and how do you think your product will directly impact the growth and testing rates compared to other products on the market? And how that will, right, impact our ability to just deal with this pandemic?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really struck me is when I was talking to one of the lead doctor at Mayo Clinic. He was saying that right now we are all blind, right? We don't know what's going on. We don't know who is infected. We're all blind, and these tools allow us to see a little bit. So I would definitely want to be able to see a little bit versus blind completely, right? So this is what the tool is for. I think it is not enough to be used by itself. It cannot just be the only things that you use, but for the mass pre-screening, these tools can be very, very effective, right? You can have these deploy. Let's say again, I was referring to like go back to work situations, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can be implemented easily, and companies can say, oh, let me make sure everybody is tested, and if you are positive, we give you help. We provide any things that you need to be taken care of so that you don't spread the virus.
Mm.
If you're negative and you don't show any symptoms, okay, come back to work, right? The same thing in, let's say, go back to Indonesia. The same things that big companies can do, like for example, Gojek, right? I'm going to take
Yes.
Gojek for example. They should administer this type of test to all the drivers, right? If the driver is tested negative and doesn't show any symptoms, put a mark on the driver's profile, so that the riders want to take the ride and see that, oh, this driver does not have any symptom, and it has been last tested 3 hours ago and it shows
Mm.
negative, then I'm going to use this as my driver. Things like
Mm.
this, I think, can help how these tools can be used effectively.
Right, right. Wait, how fast can this tool detect positive
In about
negative results?
10, 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, wow, that is really fast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how many have you been distributing currently? And also in terms of distributing this product to other companies and governments that you mentioned, what were the biggest challenges that you faced?
Yeah, we'll be shipping about 9 million of this, and it keeps growing. We just don't have enough capacity to supply all this. The problem is not the demand. The problem is in the supply. I try my best to get a good chunk of it to Indonesia, but again, we've been faced with the huge number of amount of supplies that we have on our hands. I mean, demands that we have on our hands. So the moment we are able to carve out for Indonesia, that's definitely my goal, to push it as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are you able to come up with plans to increase the supplies at this point?
The funny thing is, there were like about 2-3 weeks ago, there were plenty on the market, and then all of a sudden, people complaining about not just people, it's like countries complaining about the accuracy of some of these tools, right? For example, Spain returns 10 of thousands of these test kits to China because the accuracy level is like at 30 something percent. And then the same thing goes with Czechoslovakia and some other countries. So China step up and say, hey, if you just know how to do plastic, know how to manufacture and put together a kit that is not a medical kit, you should not be selling these kind of tools. So China cracks down a lot of these companies, and now the market is pretty much void of this type of product, good quality product. And because of that, our demand increased tremendously. And we're just trying to make sure that we can improve our capacity, but at the same time, we don't want to sacrifice the quality, because this has to be taken care of very, very well. It's not like producing iPhone. If the iPhone demands increase, we just increase the capacity, right? Yeah, if you have a one bad iPhone, so what? It's not going to cost someone else's life, but the product that we create is completely different. It's sometimes it's about life and death, so we have to be very cautious about that.
And how do you manage the production? So you are here, but the company itself is based in Singapore. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we have people all over. With Singaporean. I mean Singapore facility. We have China facility as well as in India, and we create all our enzyme paper and then we ship it to China, and then China is the place where we do all the plastic packaging, boxing it and shipping it out. There's no other countries that can scale as fast and as quickly as companies in China can. Right, when it comes to production of plastic or packaging or boxes. So there's a place where we have it all produced, but then we continue to keep the quality of the enzyme, because at the end of the day, it is the brain that has to be taken care of, and that's what we're doing. To make sure that there's a proper quality control, to make sure that the enzyme is kept at certain temperature, certain range of temperature, humidity, and so on and so forth. Because without a good care of it, the enzyme, we might ruin the enzyme and it will produce inaccurate results.
Right. Well, hopefully with the meticulous care that you've been putting into this and this effort, I really am hoping that, this will help the pandemic, help medical professionals to be able to detect this, right? And eventually care for more people, and more people will be recovering. I'm going to turn our conversation back to Purdue, because I got about what advice would you give to current Purdue students who are interested in entrepreneurship, who are looking to establish like a startup company similar to yours? And if I am correct in this, some of the startup that we know, like Amazon, Google, was founded around the same time as your effort. You were in the hub of it, in the heart of this creative effort.
Yeah, so I mean, we look at Amazon, Google, Facebook, all this, like, 1 in a billion, or 1 in 3 billions or something like that, right? So it's hard to measure up against those. But I think as an entrepreneur, it's good to set the eyes at that at that level. But at the same time, we have to be frank to ourselves and say, hey, what is acceptable as a success, right? If a success is measured by another Facebook, then most of people consider them as a failure, which is not accurate at all. So if there's a website called TechCrunch, right? Every day it talks about this company's got 100 million investment. That company is valued at X billion dollars and so on and so forth. I think that really creates a fatigue. And as an entrepreneur, you know, you want to close all these noises. I feel like it can draw so much attention away from what you're trying to focus on. I mean, I was one of them, like I still remember vividly. I was driving down to my small office, continue with my work, and I heard the news of YouTube got sold for $450 million. At that time, it was a huge number, right? Now, for the 450 million doesn't even crack a news, but back then it was like, and I was like, oh wow, this is great, and blah blah. It's like really completely consumed me, because you always feel like, okay, I want to be one of them, which is okay to be that, but not to the point where. So if there's any advice to entrepreneurs, I would say just continue to focus on what you're trying to do. Success is not definitely measured by the likes of YouTube or Google.
Right. Could that be appropriately called sensing self then?
I mean, I think it depends on how impactful the company is.
Right. So, what advice would you give to fellow entrepreneurs who are currently facing issues with getting their products approved, and also with the whole economy that is influenced by COVID-19? What kind of message would you give them?
I think the toughest out of all the governments that we have worked with, obviously each government has its own requirements, but most governments, they have a set of procedures, a very specific institutes that you have to go through and work with to make sure that they qualify your products. Those governments, as long as you provide all the necessary documentations, facts, anything that they require you of, samples, they eventually will be able to provide a way to approve you. And we're in these situations where everything needs to move fast because of COVID-19. So our approval process is a bit faster. Now, the tough challenge was when we work with countries that does not have a specific way of validating or approving things. That is the tough part, because we have to keep trying and talk to so many different institutions, and one does not make any decisions and point the fingers to another, and then we went to the other place, and I mean, there's a lot of going back and forth. I feel like there's no one formula for it, but if there is a persistency. We just continue knocking on doors, and we believe that eventually one of them is going to be open. And for the case of, for example, Indonesia, I think we knock on so many doors, and it's not open to us. Then we knock on the media door, and I think from the media it has a pretty good influence, a very positive influence, and we got a lot of people to come out and supported us.
That is wonderful, because that was the last time that I read was you were still trying to get a product to enter Indonesia. So that was here. So this is a really tumultuous time, and this is affecting Purdue students as well. So what kind of message would you like to give to our current students who are staying home, staying at the dorm while trying to get work done? What kind of message would you give to us?
I think I feel like maybe there is a good times to really assess what your goal is, and plan things out, and start to pursue it. When the economy opens up, when our life back to normalcy, you hit the ground running. It's actually a very, very good times to do that type of planning.
Thank you. And also, last question, what kind of message would you like to give to future Purdue students, right? Incoming students, future students who are watching this video?
I personally feel like Purdue gave me the best education money can buy. You know, it was very tough living in that environment, but I think with the quality of you know, knowledge that I obtained, um, you know, I came up to be who I am right now. I think a lot goes to what Purdue has given us.
Wonderful. Santo, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to stop the recording right now.
All right.